Cool. So, we're here today with Dan, the founder of Brass Monkeys. Really exciting one to talk about cold plunges and ice bathing, and the important for us, the connection between sauna and cold plunge, something we always talk about on the podcast. Dan, who are Brass Monkeys? How did you come up with the idea?
So Brass Monkey are the premium player in ice baths, I would obviously suggest. We've been going formally about 3 years now. 3 years in November, actually.
Right.
When I say formally, when we sold our first product.
Yeah.
It was probably a year prior to that in terms of the journey of actually, what are we doing, why are we doing it, what we're making, and all the rest of it, and then prototyping and all that kind of thing. But yeah, so it came around from, I would blame Wim Hof.
Yeah.
So I started with Wim Hof method in 2017 or 18.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. It wasn't really a thing then in this country.
Yeah.
Obviously been a big deal on the continent for some time. We had 3 very, very young children at the time. I think maybe we had 2 of the 3. Yeah, 2 of the 3 at the time. So we had 3 children quite close together.
Yeah.
A lot of late nights or early mornings. And that led to this, what am I going to watch at 3 a.m. with a half asleep baby that won't settle? And YouTube is the answer. And then what on YouTube? I've always been into kind of a growth mindset, I guess, learning things, but something that's easy to take in.
Yeah. And
I stumbled across Wim Hof and I thought, this sounds pretty amazing. And why is he not a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Practiced the breath work, and that's really how it started. At the first point though of exploring Wim Hof, it was nothing to do with the cold.
Right.
It was about mindset, and self-improvement, and this mind over body. The 3 parts of the Wim Hof. So I trained in the Wim Hof method as an instructor. It's not something I've pursued, but and the main pillar is mindset, which is what got me. How does this guy do these things?
Yeah.
And I just thought that's bloody unbelievable. And really, that sowed the seed for where it would go. I mean, so I was in a brand-led marketing agency at the time that I'd built with a couple of other guys, which we later exited. But we built that business, and probably 2020, I would say. So we got acquired into a bigger agency in late 2018, early 19, something like that. And then a year later, obviously, COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got progressively more interested in Wim Hof method to the point of going on expeditions and hikes. So I did the Polish trip with Wim Hof, and 50, 60 people in shorts walking up a mountain, minus 20 degrees or whatever at the top it was in crosswinds. And so this was for me kind of what I wanted to do. And then I just thought this is fantastic. And as it was really obvious to me that my time in an agency was coming to an end from I don't really want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'd done it a long time. I didn't think, let's start another agency. I was very much, my antenna was tuned to what's next.
Mm-hmm.
And what's next for me was definitely going to be build my own thing.
Yeah.
It had to be a brand and that I could build up, because I'd done that for such a long time for other people.
Yeah.
Some of them very big brands, and I just thought, what an opportunity to take my own advice, really. It's all right telling people how to build their brand.
Yeah. And was that something that was like a really natural, did the motivation to build the brand come first, or was it that the interest in the Wim Hof method?
They're the same thing for me. So building a brand is inherently about solving a problem for someone else.
Right.
The brand's just a marker in a mission, in a vision, as we spoke before, a proxy for quality and meaning. So I just scratched my own itch, really.
Yeah.
When I returned from the Poland trip with Wim Hof, I was coming back through the airport as everything was being shut down and people were purchasing toilet roll. Yeah. It was literally that time. And there was this, kind of fear, almost fear in the airport that is everyone going to get home?
Yeah.
It was like that. Like a zombie apocalypse kind of vibe. then got back to the UK, and that was I was then, unbeknown to me, in my last few months in that job, really. Yes. I then agreed with the guy that owned that agency that I had a percentage of through acquisition of art. I need to probably move on.
Yeah.
It just became and what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And then anyway, 2020, converted a chest freezer into an ice bath in my garage. And as I used it, I'm trying to think about the emotions that led to that, because it was really an emotional experience, the whole thing. You know, I was definitely in some form of, I wouldn't say depressed state, but not good.
Yeah.
Lost, crossroads. What do I want to do? Have I done well? So, you know, I was a lot of questioning, and I tend to criticize myself a lot in that, you know, we're our own worst critic, aren't we, ultimately? And I found such peace in the ice bath. And I'd not done that with the Wim Hof method prior. It was all about challenge and the idea that challenge creates change. You know, cold as a hormetic stressor, breath holding as a hormetic stressor, and that this then somehow builds, you know, kind of physiological and psychological resilience, which is all coming to pass in terms of the science that's now starting to support that. And the ice bath became a meditation space for me, and that was significant, really. And as because obviously you gasp at first.
Yeah, panic response, stress.
Yeah, and depending how often you use the ice bath, that gasp, that stress response is proportionate. You know, men do it more than women, always. You know, women are much calmer in ice baths, even if they've never done it before, despite having more cold receptors. But I remember as I started to get into the flow of it, and there was a lot of time to get into the flow of it in 2020. Yeah. I found myself just thinking, this makes me feel epic. I feel a different person. You know, I wasn't the same of the same mind after them before. Yeah. And day after day, this was evident. And then I thought, why has no one made these? Why is this not a thing? And I didn't really wrestle much with that. It was just that's fascinating. And I didn't think about it as a business at the time, because it was a very weird thing to do. And I am aware sometimes I can be weird. You know, I can do things that are not normal. Yeah. So I'm sat in a chest freezer. I'd not even taken the lesson of unplugging it first. That's how stupid I can be. Right. You know, so it's like I could have died in it, really, if it went wrong. You know, and I just siliconed it up quite roughshod, because I'm not a talented maker of things. Yeah. My brother does that. He leads that. But I was hooked on the practice of it. And so for me, it's always been a place of building resilience. Yeah. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what I was doing. I was building a resilience to really lifestyle and stress. And there was no science that I was aware of to support that. It was just what it was. Yeah. And that's really how Brass Monkey came to be, because I remember one evening just thinking, fuck it, I'm going to do this now. This is it. I don't even know what that even means, but I'm doing this. And as I dried myself off in the garage, because that's where the chest freezer was, you know, it's not like a romantic, luxury, beautiful place. This is rough. It's a garage. And I remember thinking, Brass Monkey? I'm going to call it Brass Monkey. I purchased the URL that night. And then by the end of that week, the logo was done, because I knew what I wanted it to be. You know, so although the logo is a monkey and a snowflake, it's actually about resilience. So the monkey is calm and peaceful as it faces external pressure. So it's a squashed monkey head that's made to look like a monkey in a snowflake. Right. And it's all about resilience. And this is what I was talking about regards brands, really. It's a mission that solves a problem for people. So I believe, you know, my mission is that everyone has access to cold plunge, either by purchasing our product or someone else's, or accessing our product or someone else's in a venue, gym or whatever. That's the mission. But the vision is that people learn how to take control of stress and that they can manage that and that they are proactive in that, because I believe that when we're challenged, we're changed. And this has been evident to me on the journey with the business as it is on my own personal journey with the cold. So I guess that's a really long-winded answer, but that's how Brass Monkey came to be. And then quickly from there, you spoke to... I remember, do you remember we could have barbecues and you could stand 8 meters away?
Social distance bubbles.
Yeah, I mean, no one really did it, but, you know, but respectfully in a garden, we're not, obviously, you know.
Sure.
And I remember Dale saying, what are you going to do, exiting the agency? And I said, I'm going to make ice baths. It's going to be called Brass Monkey. And I, in 30 seconds, unbeknown to me, pitched him on a business idea. In my mind, I was going to start doing what quite a few companies now have done, which is spec a product with an engineer, get it built in China and shipped over. That's roughly what I thought I would do, and maybe grab a few $100K from a few people, you know, and this will magically all come together. But Dale said, I want to do that. And Dale has a building background and kind of light engineering as part of that, you know, managing electricians and plumbers. And he's, from being a kid, he was always the person that took things apart and kind of put them back together. And he very much, he was just in and he said, this will be cool, you know, brothers working together and whatever. And I said, no, that's not what I'm doing. I want to build the jacuzzi of ice baths so that when people say ice bath, they'll think Brass Monkey because it's a niche and we want to be dominant in a niche. And at the minute, weirdly enough, it's not a thing. You know, it doesn't exist. What we're doing is almost top secret. The world doesn't know, but it's coming. And I just felt intuitively it's coming, this thing. And it won't be for everyone, but for some people it'll be everything. Yeah. And that's come to pass, really. And it's come to pass a lot faster than I imagined. You know, again, it's only 3 years. It feels a lot longer than that.
You guys have achieved a phenomenal amount in such a short amount of time. And, you know, listening to your fantastic overview of your story there's so many parallels, you know, with you guys to what we've done over the last decade. And I think, you know, again, it very similar. Yeah. You know, I was I was in that place looking for my next what my next career was. I'd spent time out in Finland, and I guess our stressor was the heat stress. Obviously, cold plunge is an important part of that, but the heat stress of it, and Max design and engineering kind of background, and very similar conversation had in a sauna where I was like, this is what we're going to do and this is what it's going to be like. And
you said, I remember it, you were like, I really think this could be something. And I'd graduated also in a kind of lost feeling, this thing of like always having something to work towards. And then all of a sudden your whole education career comes to a bit of a stop, and it's like every adult has this, but you know, what do I do now? So I'd spent the summer knocking about finishing projects for my parents who were, you know, hard-working, small family entrepreneurs too. And then we had this conversation, and I was like, well, I've got nothing better to do.
And this has happened time and again with Brass Monkey. Yeah. You know, we have around 50 people employed there, and most of them come through the organic. It's almost like a bit Avengers Assemble. It just kind of grows, and that doesn't feel like how it will grow going forwards now. But for the first 3 years, that's how it felt. And so after Dale joined, we got hold of a Morosco Forge unit. So Morosco Forge, I would say, legitimately the first ice-making ice bath that existed. It functions much like a chest freezer. It makes ice and then it stops. And so Dale took that apart and put it back together again, and then announced, well, we can build this better. We can, you know. So that's what that first probably 9-10 months prior to selling the first unit is what we did. It was a make that better. That inherently meant we started to become more like a software company, because I couldn't abide the fact that this thing just made ice and stopped, and then there's a big bloody sheet, like you sat in a big ice donut. That just seemed to me to be ridiculous, because we wanted to create a quality product, which meant stainless steel, insert stainless steel frame, quality components, and so there's a minimum viable cost for that.
Yeah.
And initially people would say, oh, you guys, fucking rip off merch. We'd get this on Instagram, You can build that for 1,500 quid. I used to think you can't buy the compressor for 1,500 quid.
Yeah.
You're kind of deluded.
Yeah.
But that it was just a testament to kind of what we were aiming for was so much more than that. And I thought, well, for that price point, this thing needs to be efficient. It needs to release ice. It needs to be innovative. I shouldn't need a weapon to make the product function, to smash, which I was used to doing in a chest freezer. And I would sometimes clip the side of the chest freezer, not me, but just half asleep and 5 a.m. or whatever. And so then we had to have a PCB board, and we had to then have, at the time, very simple software that, switched on and switched off. And then we realized, well, we probably should release the ice. So we developed our first patent, which is defrost. So the application of defrost to an ice bath is a patent that we hold. And what that meant, was return an amount of stored heat back through in reverse through the system. It's a solenoid switches, sends it back through, and the ice pops off, and that means you can control sheet depth, and now you can break it with your fingers, and it's much more. It cools faster because it's not a big lump of ice, and that very much set the trajectory of what kind of ice bath company we're going to be, and it gave us a quality of experience, quality of components, very, very UX led, very user experience led. And this is what I mean with a brand. What kind of brand? Well, for me, it should evoke a feeling. It should be emotional. I should feel connected to it because it's easy to live with it. It gives me the reward that I want quickly. So it's inherently kind of what's the brand experience from the unpacking and the hat and the things you were talking. We do all that on purpose, really, as touch points, and it's far from perfect. Not at all is it perfect, but it's always been what we do, the kind of the Brass Monkey way, really. And then another guy joined, Chris. So Chris is he was a co-founder in the agency life, and Chris is he's kind of like the grown up, I would say. He's more the grown up. So I'm more the random brand led. He says visionary. I don't know. I feel uncomfortable with those kind of terms, really. But if I were to have a label, I would be more. I tend to live in 6 months onwards, if not a year, and worry about things then as if they're real today, which is kind of strange, but I do.
It's very similar to where I sit on the Finnmark ship, and I often describe that as, you've got chief engineers who make sure that the ship sails as efficiently and safely as possible. Yeah. And I spend all my time on the bridge, looking at the icebergs, looking at the shallows, and looking ahead at where we're going and sort of planning for that. Yeah. And I think it's very similar.
And Dale's very much in the here and now, and that's where he just naturally lives. And Chris is probably somewhere in the middle. But then it became these three musketeers, really. And Chris is quite technically minded. He can turn his hand to a lot of things that it sounds like you do, from finance to legals to. Whereas I tend to just get really bored. I'll try, but with the best will in the world, it's not the best use of. I'll make a meal of it, guaranteed. And it was can we make them kind of efficiently at first? Will anyone want to buy one? Because turns out from the build cost, they're going to be quite expensive, these things. The price designed itself. I'm not even sure if that's how you should do product development, but we just built it.
When you're in an emerging market, you can't do focus groups because it's like what are you comparing it against? If it's a new practice, a new sort of thing, and we found this as well with people were already familiar with sauna. It's very mature technology is a word I use loosely there, but it's still, in terms of, it's very construction adjacent, so people kind of use yardsticks about what they expect it to cost. And what I always found strange was in the early days they weren't really comparing it with what they would spend on a luxury bathroom or a luxury kitchen. And I was thinking, how did these specifiers and effectively products and services, how have they come to a level that people, you could ask anyone, what does a good kitchen cost? And they'll have a figure in their head. Yeah. And there's like, even if you've never built a home before, there's this kind of idea around what it should cost. But when you're in an emerging market, you have some outrageous phone calls where people lead you down the garden path, and you make this mistake early on in the process of going with them and not qualifying out budgets and stuff early on. And then when you say, so this is going to cost between X and Y, they fall off the rocker and they say, I thought it was going to be like 300 quid. You know, as you say,
we
that
had a load of that.
Compressor.
We had a load of that, and really what's happened is we naturally grew residential, I guess high net worth individuals, and not always high net worth. People that either just had money to invest in their home setup, or it's people with a very passionate, I must have this, and they were making. So they've still got a reasonable amount of money, of course, but it's really considered purchase.
Yeah,
it might be changing the car for the next few years. Yeah, it was like that. It felt anyway.
The early adopters are that kind of mix.
Yeah, they just wanted the best product.
Yeah,
and they also understood. We were UK based. Most customers initially were UK based, and they understood that they could feel that we give a shit really, and we were going to be around afterwards, and we were going to look after them. And I was shocked how many people just loved the fact they were excited by the entrepreneurial endeavor. The fact that we were doing it was in itself a reward for them. Mm-hmm. They were part of founding a company in a funny way. Yeah. And you know, those first 10 customers, they very much were really, because their early feedback, their early encouragement, their early, I guess, their desire to be part of a community, a tribe. Yeah, they felt part of it, not just an early adopter. It was like we're in it with you almost. And the guy that bought the first product, Paul Mott, he's based out of South Shields. You know, he does. It's like a male focused life coach, you know, help you to help yourself, build your life better kind of guy. And he was customer number one. We put the website live, and within 24 hours he bought one.
Amazing.
And people like him that really helped kind of cement it and show us what we were doing, because by their feedback and understanding what their desire was, what their motivation was, it gave us an idea of what we think we're actually doing. It's changed a lot since then, of course. You know, there's a mass influx of literally replica products. There's quite a few of them now. Nebula and 3 Degrees, and I don't know this. There must be maybe 20, 30. It's some of them literally replicate as best they can. And some of them are just, you know, generally how cheap can you make it? Well, and that's created problems.
You know, it's something that, you know, we've seen with the nature of what we do and the kind of clientele that we work with, very similar to what you've described. A portion of our domestic residential are high net worth, ultra high net worth, and people who just want the best. And others where it's a considered lifestyle purchase. And again, you know, they want to work with a company that they trust, that's going to do it properly, that's going to be there for the long run. And you know, we work with clients who've spent holidays out in Finland all the time and retired, and they don't have a particularly affluent lifestyle, but sauna is something they're really passionate about. Very, very similar. But as we've sort of seen this space evolve over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, exactly what you've described is there's two clear factions in the marketplace. You've got iterate and innovate, which you guys clearly, you know, are market leaders in that space, and you've got race to the bottom, who can do it the cheapest for the mass market. And I think yours is definitely the place to be, because at the end of the day, you guys are bringing something new to the space. You're not looking at how cheaply you can do something, and ultimately, it's not a product that you want to scrimp on. It's not a product that you want to do cheaply, because, you know, there's a lot that can go wrong. And we have exactly the same thing here. I often think to myself, like, people who look at things and they go with the absolute cheapest. In the last decade, the number of times that I've had a conversation with people going, "Yep, that will cost you more in the long run if you do that." It's very short-sighted, and I see those as short-sighted businesses generally.
Yeah.
If you're just chasing who can make it the cheapest. I was surprised when I learned just how heavy a Brass Monkey's cold plunge is, and often, one of the bits of feedback we have from our customers is like, we have a full stainless steel door handle, and people go, "Oh," like they just, before they even open their sauna the first time, they go, "Oh, that's nice," And I think there is an element of that. Okay, it's not a wasteful use of materials, but it's that build quality.
Well, it's also it means a lot of it can be recycled. It's mostly stainless steel, so you can strip the unit in.
It's probably worth a bit in scrap value.
Yeah, and I think that matters because you're creating a product that's inherently recyclable and as much as it can be, and we can make that more and more and more the case as we grow.
Is yours the sort of product where if somebody wanted to upgrade, let's say in 3 or 4 years, they could disconnect the chiller or the PCB, and so that the bath itself is, they don't need to recycle it because they can upgrade it and improve.
Yeah, I mean, it will be that, and that will be a thing, but being able to repanel the exterior and replace the plant. You wouldn't need to replace all the plant, but an amount of it, and it's effectively a new product, isn't it, once it's given a clean. So that's how we see it, and we set out with that kind of in mind, really, that this thing will grow with you, because back to the mission, I think it's a thing that you would want for life, and it will serve you for life if you treat it well.
Great.
Yeah, it's certainly the mindfulness around sustainability in consumption of products now is definitely sort of feels like it's coming to the fore, particularly as the West wakes up and realizes how much we might have had a feel-good factor of recycling stuff, but then when you see it on the news, it's just burning on beaches in the Far East. It's been shipped out somewhere to be recycled. Actually, we need to think about this another way. Go back to the make, do, and mend, and repairability, and the modularity.
Even on we had to start with stainless steel because of the ice making. So that's a panel with copper coil wound in it that drops to -9, -12 degrees, that creates the ice sheet at temperatures below 1 degree. So stainless steel was forced on us, and really is inherent to the product design. But even when we look at the chiller products now, which is just cooling water away from that unit and then pumping it back in, we stuck with stainless steel for the reason that, well, it just doesn't make sense or feel right to use plastic to create margin, because it's effectively just future crap burning on a beach. It's not good. It's not good for anybody.
No.
And there's a robustness to steel. There's a quality marker, and if you clean it properly, it'll just last a lifetime.
The going back to something you said at the start of this, talking about cold and stress, and that's something that chimed with me, because I found when I started going to sauna and cold plunge regularly, and particularly when I'm able to maintain that regularity, something changes in the way that I experience stress, and it feels far less impersonal. So the way I sort of describe it to people is, if you're going to sauna and cold plunge regularly, and I'm sure it'd be the same if it was just cold plunge, you feel like those stressful things are happening, but they're happening like at an arm's length,
further away,
rather than actually wearing the stress and physically feeling the manifestation of that. I'm interested to hear, we know a lot about the health benefits of sauna, and we've had medical specialists on the podcast, but I'd love to hear what's current in cold plunge science. And we're big on, like, we cut the BS and we cut the quackery, because there's a lot of people out there that will say sauna will cure your cancer and cure baldness and everything else and all that great stuff, and it's just nonsense, and it's just people playing on insecurities to try and sell something. Now, from our conversations, I gather that you guys share the same sort of approach. So tell us what the latest is in the science of
there are hundreds of studies. It's not as well studied as sauna. Clearly not, but it's catching up now, and I think that's encouraging. I would say, if I think what people rave about, it's not the. So I'll come on to this side, but it's not actually the science side. I remember Professor Green, Stephen Manderson.
Mm-hmm.
He was on a panel that we were running maybe last summer, and I was talking about science to him, and he said, "Oh, I don't buy all that. I just know I feel fucking great afterwards." And that was how I got into it, because there was no logic to getting into an ice bath. And the way I approached it before digging into the science, because then I created the deliberate cold exposure guide that you can download from our website, because I wanted to build a bit of more of a grounded view of the science. What I'd noticed was the same thing, that I felt better, I felt energized, I felt a very significant state change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a shock, is it? Sitting in, almost 400 litres of cold water, maybe even 0 degree iced water, your nervous system is altered as a result of that. There is a reset. And I remember thinking, this makes sense, because we were born this way. Humans grew up next to sources of cold water.
Mm.
People didn't get warm baths. They didn't sleep in air-conditioned or permanently warmed houses. Children were born in cold water in some places around the world. Their first experience on planet Earth was fucking freezing.
Mm.
And I think that's interesting, isn't it? And so as I started to unpick the science, to start to answer your question, the main thing that happens is and it's different between men and women, because again, the benefits are nuanced.
Mm-hmm.
You release an awful lot of norepinephrine. So women 2 to 3 times increase in volume, men maybe 530%. And that acts as a neurotransmitter and a hormone. And really that's what's embedded within, where do all these benefits come from? And norepinephrine, acts as from a hormonal perspective, it's most obvious if you look to the space of recovery, using cold to manage inflammation. And that, I think, is the core of it, because inflammation's systematic. It's, so if you cool your entire body, it's different to cooling a sore knee with a pack of peas, isn't it? But the pack of peas will help manage inflammation locally. But if you cool the whole body, and there's a chronic inflammatory conditions that's maybe rolling into autoimmune disease and or immune system problems, or maybe metabolic health issues and cancer and all, I can understand why the science can come across as a bit strange and almost snake oil, but at its core, it's inflammation. Mm-hmm. Behind all those major diseases and problems, and even depression, is inflammation.
Yeah.
And really what the cold's excellent at doing is managing inflammation, to the point that there are studies now that say if you do resistance training, weights, and you want to be big, if you have an ice bath straight after the weight training session, you mitigate the whole point of doing the weight training session. Mm-hmm. So there is no inflammation. There's no positive inflammation. Hypertrophy can't occur.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing, isn't it? That it will even remove the positive. It's that good at reducing inflammation. So I would say, if people were to think of one thing, think about chronic inflammation. I mean, what excites me more about the science these days, I would say, is it's around stress and resilience building, and kind of where all this came from. So I'm looking much more, how do we promote those ideas to people, not necessarily and then rush and buy a brass monkey, but again, back to the mission to make cold plunge part of everyone's life in some way. It would be, there's studies there's a study that came out in China and I think in the UK, and they both started to explore the effects of cold water immersion on HRV. Mm-hmm. And HRV is a physiological measure of psychological resilience. And with consistent use of cold water immersion, you improve HRV score. So when I'm challenged, I am evidently changed, and I'm more resilient in life. And that's really what's caught my attention. As I love all the anti-inflammation, and it's very believable from a cavemen through to now, and I can see that those studies will all catch up and flesh out what's really going on. But HRV is where I want us to focus. So we're funding a PhD student for the next 3.5 years, starting 1st of May.
Mm-hmm.
And that PhD is going to be exploring the relationship between HRV and ice baths. So, and really the outcome being, how does it help with depression and anxiety? That's essentially what that will be. And because I want us to contribute to that space, because there's so much science.
Yeah.
Which bit do we want to engage with that feels important and unique and different?
Yeah.
And I think within that, what dosage? So there's an awful lot of frustrating posts and content that I see related to ice baths, and they're good, they're bad, they're no good for women, they're no good for and it depends.
Yeah.
It depends. And unlike a sauna, I think dosage is easily something to misunderstand. And the dosage is made of temperature and duration. If I were to sit in a I don't know, I think technically science recognises cold water at 16 degrees C. I don't know why. There'll be a reason, because it's the warmest a river gets. Also, I don't know, but there'll be something that has made that the number. I could sit in that for probably 20 minutes, maybe way more. I don't know. I honestly
on a
don't
sunny
know.
day, I'm sure there's people sat in their back garden.
Yeah,
in 16
yeah,
degrees
and it's cold.
yeah.
You know, I will be feeling cooled, and I'll notice those state changes. But I've been a really long time. Well, what we know is if you go in, those same studies will say, well, if you go in at 5 degrees C, you need to be in a much shorter duration to get the same benefits. And they typically are measuring things like norepinephrine. So, when does the spike come? How long does it take? When you go to 0 degrees, it's not tested, it's not studied. It will be, but when you go to 0 degrees, how much of that dose do you need? Well, it's not 15 minutes, I can assure you. You know, it's much more like 60 to 90 seconds.
And actually, is there much like sauna, a point where if you push beyond a certain temperature that the benefits start to be replaced with negatives?
I would say so, because I did that.
Yeah.
So before
Hypothermia.
starting, so before starting Brass Monkey, I was playing with it, and there was nothing really written about it. And I remember once, because I used to regularly go in the ice, but in the chest freezer, and then afterwards go for a walk. COVID, walking on my own, and it just worked as my part of my little routine. And I felt good for that before then starting work, on a desk in the corner of the bedroom kind of thing. And I remember one day I'd pushed it, and I experienced what I now know to be afterdrop. An afterdrop is where you've cooled the exterior of the body, including the muscle, to the extent that it's too cold now.
It can't heat itself.
It can't easily heat itself, and that's because you cool. A lot of people don't understand this, but you cool through convection. So as you cool the outer, when you get out of the ice bath, you are going to continue to cool, and you can't stop that. You can't stop that now. So I'd overdosed, essentially, and that would have been a circa 0 degrees C, because there was shitloads of ice in it, and like a slush puppy. And I remember my hands turning white and purple and not good, and I felt unwell, and I had to sit down. I didn't feel like I was going to die or anything, but I remember thinking, Jesus Christ, this isn't good. What have I done?
Yeah.
And then I kept moving, and then it suddenly just went.
Yeah.
It's like everything that went back into reverse, and the body could. And then I felt like I could move better, and I jogged a bit. And by the time I got home, I was okay. I felt fine. Bit of a headache, but that was a lesson. So. And we don't talk about dosage. And I think really the conversation with ice baths we need to be much more careful on dosage. Women don't need the same dose.
Yeah.
So women have, and there is science to support this. I think she's called Dr. Sims. I think for Stacey Sims, I feel like is her name. And she's been showing that women have a different metabolism. They warm differently. So it means they're not affected in the same way. They have far more cold receptors. So women typically feel more cold more of the time. But they also release a lot less norepinephrine. So when they're in there, it's not stressful, which is quite paradoxical, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, why did nature do that? They're cold more of the time and need to be warm. But when they go in cold, they're actually more robust.
Yeah.
The men gasp far, far more. So they experience a higher spike. And then a lot of the benefits are the same, decreased cortisol response, HRV building. And this is all, I just think, still very much emerging. But for me, the science, I think, is, on the one hand, managing inflammation, systematic inflammation can only be a good thing. And ice baths do that. Cold water immersion does that better than anything else. And I think this psychological resilience, I think, is probably the standout hero for me, and where we'll back.
Yeah, as somebody who's enjoyed sauna in isolation, cold plunge in isolation, and both, there is also this synergy that when you combine heat stress followed by cold stress, the normalization period afterwards, and this is the important bit actually, and people like Glenn from Sauna Times always talk about this, and not from a scientific understanding point, but that is the point where you get this big endorphin hit. And you've talked about a couple of things there that I think are important. We often say, people ask us, how long should I stay in the sauna? And for us, we say, listen to your body. Don't watch a sun timer. Don't force yourself. Because sometimes when I'm under the weather, and actually you should typically avoid going to sauna and cold plunge if you're under the weather. Anyway, your lymphatic system mobilizes and you'll probably spread the virus more and you'll feel more unwell. But I might, if I'm feeling a bit down or a bit under the weather, I might only want to stay in the first round only five minutes. Sometimes I'll go in there and 35 minutes have passed and I'm still in here. Like, this is crazy. So, listen to your body and your body will tell you, okay, it's time. Cold is slightly different because you have to overcome your initial cold shock response. And everything in your body is saying, this is wrong. I shouldn't be getting into this. But for me, after sauna, cold shower doesn't cut it. Sitting around outside is not great. If I just plunge fully, like commit to cold water and then get past that first 10 seconds, then, like you say, 30 seconds, a minute, maybe 2, depending on how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Just listening to my body, and my body will say, it's now time to get out. And strange things happen. Sometimes if I stay in slightly too long, usually when I'm in cold water, I'll go, when I feel like I'm about to start shivering, I should have gotten out already. And that's like, I'm in there and I get this urticaria, stinging nettle kind of sensation sometimes. And that's usually just when I'm just on the edge of it. And we often say to people, you've got to be careful going between the hot and the cold and not forcing yourself to stay too long. But normalizing properly, and I'll often say to people at the end of a hot cold kind of rotation, sit on the lower bench of your sauna and warm up, not to the point that you're sweating, but to just normalize your body temperature. Because if you go to sauna and you don't cool down properly, you'll feel hot all day. And a lot of people who use saunas in health clubs and spas who don't combine hot and cold, you go to the sauna and then for the rest of the day you're just sweating. And then the same thing happens to me if I do hot, cold, finish on a cold, come in, dry myself off, have a quick shower, whatever. All night I'll be freezing. And I used to think, listening to what you said there, obviously it's not this, but I used to think it's because I got cold in my bones, and my bones are cold. And my body's even struggling to heat that up. And so I'd be cold all night and I couldn't sleep.
Well, there's some important things going on there. And again, we can probably touch on some of the science. So that norepinephrine, one of its major jobs is to trigger effectively brown fat activation. And brown fat really matters. So when you're new to the reintroducing your body to the cold, your body does know what to do because we evolved in it. So if you let the body if you get the mind out of the way, the monkey mind, and step back and just let it do its thing and follow your own intuition and feeling, that hike in norepinephrine will over time, so I'm talking if I were to say if you were doing ice bath 2-3 times a week and you were doing it for 3 or 4 weeks, you will start to become fat burning. Now, not in the weight loss white fat sense, because that's a lot of misleading, crappy science. Yeah, people saying, oh, it burns fat. It does, but not in the way you might. It's not going to mean that you can eat loads of cookies and whatever. Unfortunately, and that matters because it smooths out that feeling, and you warm much quicker.
Yeah.
So sometimes when I walk towards the ice bath in the morning, I start to feel warm, and that's just conditioning.
Psychological, yeah.
It's conditioning. So the body's, I need to switch this on. So it switches on effectively your central heating, because you only got 2 ways to warm up, really. Mechanically, shivering, burning glucose in the muscles to generate heat, or through brown fat. And brown fat stores are high in babies, which is why babies must be not covered and smothered on a night. That's why so as a parent, you want them to be cozy and warm, but they're not like you. They are inherently little fat burning machines, and they'll burn up if you cover them up too much. Well, we're stimulating the regrowth of the activation of brown fat activation, and I think that's a very interesting area. And the body will use white fat to build brown fat stores, because brown fat is effectively mitochondrially dense fat, as in it's got more mitochondria, it's got it's energy dense, which is why your body can quickly switch it on, and it's a more efficient way to warm up. But if your body isn't challenged, it won't change.
Yeah.
It won't switch that on. So if you want to get good at being warmer, end on the cold, but control the dose. Don't make it stressful. But end on the cold very frequently. If you go into warm, you'll switch that off.
Okay.
Your body has no cause now to. Well, I know I always end on warm. So
yeah.
It's not a problem, because your body's ultimately it's efficient.
Yes.
It doesn't do things it doesn't need to do. But if it feels it's why you get bigger if you lift heavy weights, or you get good at press-ups if you do press-ups. Well, you get good at being warm if you need to get warm. But there are ways to do that and not stressing the body too much. So I think, going gentle and being kind to yourself, definitely. But also don't wimp out. I think
the beginning is hard for people.
You need to. I think you need to get past that 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And just feel the other end, and then get out, and then repeat.
And that's, I think, the breath work aspect of it is important, because and we see it, again, a lot of people who've, never done cold plunge before, and we're saying, you want to go sauna and cold plunge together. And the benefit of doing those two things together is, if you stay long enough in a sauna, it's inviting to get into the cold water, or almost inviting. Yeah. But a lot of people, oh no, I can't do it, I don't like it. And they get in and they have a pain response. Cold shock response is painful. Everything in their body says, don't do this is terrible. Yeah. They gasp and they panic their breath. And if if you're tricking the brain into calming your breathing, your brain goes, well, actually I'm calm. Yeah. And if you can get past that first 10 seconds, everything changes. And I think, you talked about this the first time you got in that chest freezer in the garage, and we talk almost religious experience type, first baptism, as it were, into cold plunge. And once you get past that and you let it, you let yourself normalize in the cold water, everything changes, the mindset changes. And when you get out, that sense of euphoria is just incredible. But most people are very comfortable in their life. They're not exposed to those kind of stresses. So it doesn't feel right. But if, and I say to people, like, now it's easy for me, like they see me get out of the sauna, I get in the cold plunge, and they go, oh, how the hell do you do that? And it's because I do it a lot. And when you do it a lot, your body does learn, and it becomes easier and easier. Yeah. Your body forgets it as well. If I don't go to sauna and cold plunge for an extended period of time, or if I'm traveling a lot and I come back and get in, I feel it a lot more. Yeah. It unlearns just as quickly as it learns.
Absolutely. It's efficient, isn't it?
And it's like going to the gym. If you stop going to the gym, you're not going to stay hench. You'll atrophy, you'll lose that.
Absolutely.
As well. But, the more you do it, it just becomes
And even
easier.
like you were talking about the pain in the end of the fingers, that's the capillaries and the smooth vascular muscle inside the capillaries spasms because it's not exercised. So the cold forces that exercise. And just like when you're in, kind of extreme heat in a sauna, the blood is forced into the capillaries. It's forced out and creates the sweating and the detox. Well, it's the opposite, isn't it, for when you go into the cold? So that everything's locked to the core. All the smooth vascular muscle in the arteries protects the core, the heart, so that the temperature doesn't change in the core of your body. Even if it feels in your bones, your core is looked after. Yeah. And the smooth vascular muscle in the capillaries, they throttle blood flow. And then obviously they don't want your body doesn't want the fingers to fall off, so then it will periodically pulse blood in. And that smooth vascular muscle is effectively it's a cardiovascular workout in the vascular muscle sense. There's real detail to that.
There was a really interesting study we've mentioned a few times on this podcast. I won't be able to remember all of it, but whilst we were in Finland at the World Sauna Forum, this guy was talking about exactly that process, and they were monitoring after someone had been to the cold plunge after sauna, and the difference in heart rate, I think it was, at the toe versus actually at the heart. And there's this kind of delay because of this cyclical vasoconstriction and then dilation.
Yeah.
And
it's amazing.
It's what gives you that arterial toughness and everything. Yeah. That you've got to keep your vascular system, or your veins, or your arteries, or your capillaries. You've got to keep them limber for them to work.
Yeah, and I think just like your immune system, I think these are all really fascinating ancillary benefits. For some people, maybe they're not ancillary, but for me, they're the oh wow, and this, and but yeah, I think there's some logic to wanting to exercise your cardiovascular system to its fullest extent, and the fact that you sat there motionless doing it, as in sat in a sauna, it's insane, really, that your body's having this heavy-duty workout. But for me, it's always been finding the peace. I know other people will use ice baths as a recovery mechanism, and it's a blunt tool. It's like a dumbbell. I just get in. And your footballers, we're quoting for some projects that include footballers at the minute, and they want to stand up. It's just a tool to cool. Cold water is, 25 times more thermally efficient at extracting heat from something than air, which is why you don't need a great deal of it. So they just want to cool their legs and kind of help that healing process after training or whatever. Whereas for me, it's a meditative practice, and it was about finding peace in chaos, hence the monkey in the snow. So everyone's got their own why. I think if you know your own why, and you're in tune with yourself as to what am I trying to do? It's like, I think this is important with any supplementation. Are you taking vitamin D because for a reason? Is it about longevity, health, because an influencer said it? Why am I doing this? Because then it becomes a routine and it becomes important part of a practice.
Yeah.
For me, it was always clear why.
But I like the fact as well that at a surface level, there's a clear practical benefit to people, even from maybe an enjoyment perspective. And as with everything that we seem to consume as humans, there's this kind of connoisseurship that can evolve, and that the more you scratch away and you start watching those Wim Hof videos, you fall down a bit of a rabbit warren, and before you know it, you've built the most well-known cold bathing brand in. Do you know how you feel like you fare on the international stage? Well, certainly the biggest brand in the UK.
Yeah, we've shipped to I think 28 countries now. Certainly, our furthest place, Dubai, probably. I think we've got one in
Singapore,
one in
right?
Yeah, we've got an office in Singapore. Yeah, so we've probably done 10 to 15 sales out there so far.
Brilliant.
And we're very much trying to take the whole thing global. It's how can we do that while staying in business, really?
Yeah. But that whole journey from what you've described today so beautifully and eloquently, it started from an interest, and then there was like the breathwork part of it was fulfilling a sort of a surface level need, and then the more you've got into it, you've refined that process and the whole experience, and it's like you've gone from a surface level to a full-blown connoisseur, and it's this. Then you become more and more obsessed with chasing the dragon, so to speak.
Absolutely, yeah. And I permanently have Wim Hof in my head when I'm in an ice, because I can't avoid it. You know, from going out to Poland and having those experiences, he's kind of in my ear all the time, and so I don't tie myself in an ice bath. And I know a lot of people do this, and I don't understand it, because I think they're missing the gift. Yeah, I do understand it. That's wrong.
It's so similar to sauna.
Yeah, for me, it's go in and feel your way forward. But I was taught that. Yeah, and that for me was I didn't get in the chest freezer ever and think I must do 2 minutes. Yeah, I used to get in the chest freezer and think, get through the gasp, and see how hard you can relax. But then it was a practice of so Wim Hof would be telling me, soften the shoulders, soften the jaw, breathe gently. Can you feel your heartbeat in your left index finger? Can you feel your heartbeat in your right big toe? You know, this idea of being in tune, mind, body, connected. And really, Wim Hof method is about connection of mind and body. That's essentially it, you know, and then to other people, and then to the earth, and then to that's what
it becomes a lot more philosophical rather than just a prescriptive health.
So I started not only doing something that was weird, like who the hell gets in an ice bath, but even my approach was not, even now I would say, unusual. But the real gift is, I think, is to take that view of it. It is a way to, it's a bathing experience, really, and it's giving you a. Yeah, we have a YouTube channel where we promote videos of "Cold is my teacher." That's a Wim Hof phrase, "Cold is my teacher." So we didn't come up with that, and so we're asking people their why and their practice and what they've learned, and I think the more people wake up to seeing it as a healing tool, a way to, something that we've done for millennia, but you know, a healing tool I think is important. For other people, it's just not what they want to do. They may be more like the Romans were, where there's a hot room and a frigidarium and it's a social experience and we all just crack on and then go home. You know, this is, either way, it's not new what we're doing.
No.
It's been around for millennia.
It's just this generation's flavour, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So what's next for Brass Monkeys? What does the next couple of years look like for you guys?
Global domination.
Yeah,
pretty
much. One cold plunge at a time.
Yeah. No, the goal is to, how do we democratize access? So we can see that there's a high net worth sales opportunity. That's complicated so far for us to navigate. You know, which intermediaries, how do we grow the business that way? But it's not very on mission, and that's always jarred with us internally. So about 15 months ago, we started the process of developing a commercial product. So all of our product is spec'd and built in-house from day one. That's how we've done it. So we don't mass import products from overseas. And so we started an R&D project, Dale did, on the build side. How do we uprate cooling rates? How do we uprate filtration? How do we layer in autodosing, have more powerful UV, make them easy to maintain for people that are used to managing wet leisure products, or equally easy to maintain if you've never done it before? You know, how do we factor in auto top up, and how do we collect data from them that mean we can diagnose problems remotely and or the person operates it? A very big list of stuff we needed to do. We've now done all that. That is largely completed. So we've converged eventually on a robust commercial product. There's definitely things that we can polish. A lot of it's software and how we communicate to owner operators and But in terms of meeting standard, being capable, the components that are capable of the job, that's long since done. So really now, to answer your question, it's how and where do we roll out commercial? So we don't really see a direct competitor in that outside of spa contractors and people that are happy to buy a large chiller, a large pump and filtration system and cobble it together. Our point of difference is very much in supporting the owner-operator and them having data and performance and how do we create theatre around it in those environments. So guided content, sensors that can detect occupancy. How do we help them protect their members? And we think much more about that entire experience from owner-operator through to customer experience and how the products are deployed. And that's where we're focusing now. It's a case of which markets do we do that in. And I think if we get that right, then we create a way to not only meet the mission, but grow a business. Because at the minute, I still don't feel we've grown a business. I think it's still very much we're scratching around, figuring it out. You know, it's like being at war most days. And I think that's, as I understand, quite normal for a very young company our size. But I'm keen to systemize and grow, and I'm not even sure I know what that means yet. But that's the journey we're on.
That's part of the fun of it, and and I think with a bit of the context of having been in the game slightly longer, that evolution of constantly finding people better than you to do things in the business, and suddenly those people come with their own ideas and ability, and you're just there to support them and help feed that. And I think in the beginning, you touched on it before about assembling the Avengers. It's very difficult for an unproven brand. It's a high risk thing for somebody to go and work for a startup. Low pay, high risk. They might not be here, and it is a risky thing to do. But as you grow and people say, "Oh, this company's going somewhere," it just becomes that magnet. And we're fortunate now to be in that position where 5-6 years ago, trying to find the A team is a much more of a challenge. Now, there are people who come to us and they're like, I could do this for you, and this is why I'm really good. And you can see they've got a proven track record of it, and you're like, perfect,
And it's much clearer what they would be joining now. Democratizing access to cold plunge is evident and clearer when the company strategy supports that. It's hard to justify that that's what we're doing when we're still figuring out how the thing works. And how do we get rid of that component that feels flaky? How do we what's a better way to do that? Even down to the detail of maximizing flow rates, and it's quite involved, I would say.
But you'll never get to that. It's a dangerous thing to imagine that there'll be a perfect product, right?
No.
You're always going to be, we could do this better, and we could do this. And
it's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
The more you know, the less you realise.
Yeah, exactly. The more you state that you actually know very little. And
that's the joy of this. Go on. The joy of this podcast is like we have amazing people like yourself, and we're just like, we know so little about it.
Yeah, well, it's that each of the experts we consult with contradicts the last one.
Yeah.
So we don't make it up. Well, we used to make it up. Figuring it out, we didn't have much to work on, and people didn't want to help us initially. It was very difficult to get a refrigeration engineer that would want to work with us, because what we were doing sounded like we'd had a drunken idea and started the next morning, and so people kind of ran away from that. And then we found a local guy, Bob, who's like I don't know, Bob's late 70s. We were like his retirement project, and it was only because we were his retirement projects that we got his attention, and he obviously thought we were interested, and he was the first expert, and we couldn't get anyone to help on filtration either, but now we can speak to any expert, and they're like, oh yeah, you're a thing, here's my hefty day rate, but then they just contradict, and they don't quite have a clear answer. Even when we were figuring out it's only a couple of months ago the standards came in on water treatment through PUTAG. But that took them 3 years to do that.
And it was, I think, pushed by the change from ozone. Now it's all UV filtration.
Now it's UV. We only stuck with ozone for 6 months.
Yeah.
But the reason we moved from ozone wasn't because we had a crystal ball. It does feel like the future, but literally feel like the future. There was no evidence of this. People are like, oh no, ozone and chlorine's the way. Other people are like, oh no, it's old tech ozone. The reason we moved on, so we probably tested, I would say definitely 30 ozone generators on the product when we were going through the CE certification, because our products are certified UKCA and CE. And the ozone just couldn't work with the electrical testing. It created very, very high level noise spikes. And we couldn't understand this because we'd chosen ozone generators that are on hot tubs, that are on a lot of wet leisure products around the world. And what that says to me is that the whole thing's fucking rigged. Someone's just lying somewhere and putting these, because we couldn't get one to pass. The products all caused, it wasn't close either. They are way off. They are way off. And when we called out the manufacturers, this product won't pass. Can you advise? What are we missing? Something? Just didn't respond.
Yeah. I mean, you've touched on something there, and I'll be careful what I say, but, in every industry, I think there's a VW emissions scandal waiting to appear. And we see that with certifications in the UK and in the US and products appearing on marketplaces that we wouldn't touch with a barge pole. And somebody somewhere in Europe, I've heard producers talk about CE standing for China export.
Absolutely.
Because it's just printed on
anything
the product.
Can get past there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem.
No.
I don't think it's a problem.
CE, China export.
It's been a journey. But we switched to UV. We've gone through a couple of those components, but much more sound and does the job. But comes with its own challenges. You need to maintain water hygiene. If your filtration isn't good, the UV is going to be impaired.
Yeah.
So it comes with trade-offs for sure. We're keen to avoid any kind of use of chlorine for a long time.
Yeah.
You don't need chlorine in our product from a residential point of view. From an owner-operator point of view, it's their discretion. We encourage hydrogen peroxide. So we have a doser that will dose hydrogen peroxide, bromine or chlorine. Most want chlorine because it's just industry standards. It's also cheap. If you want to use hydrogen peroxide, far superior from a cleaning perspective, but
a lot more.
An awful lot more money. Yeah, an awful lot more money. But it degrades to water, and oxygen is odorless, and it's the one that you would back if you were health conscious for sure.
Yeah. So, look, I'm conscious we could just talk for hours, and that's always a good sign of an enjoyable podcast. I know we've got to wrap this one up. So if people want to learn more about Brass Monkeys, they can find you on your website.
Yeah, brassmonkey.co or Instagram. We post on there. We do bits and bobs on TikTok, but not so much.
And your YouTube channel?
Yeah, /Brass Monkey Ice, I believe it is. Yeah.
Fantastic. Dan, this has been amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So much.
Cheers. Thanks.